What's up, everybody? Thanks again for tuning in here to this version of Backwater Stories, where I talk about the first time I caught certain fish species or just very memorable catches. And today we're talking about a fish that I've only caught a few of, and I think most people have only caught a few of on fly, and that is the Gator Trout. This is just a giant sea trout. And when I first started fly fishing is really the only time in my life I came across these. So these first few episodes or stories are stories that happened, 8 to 10 years ago. And I started fly fishing, most people know, over in Mosquito Lagoon in the river. That's where I figured out pretty much everything. And I was alone at the time. I never fished with anybody. I didn't know anybody that fly fished. So situations like this were super difficult for me because all I had was this 5-weight trout rod, and I fished the hell out of saltwater with it because it was all I had. I had no money. I had nothing else to do, so I'm like, screw it, I'm gonna go do it anyways. And I remember I was fishing, I want to say, if I remember the name of the place correctly, it's Dummett's Cove or something like that. It's in Merritt Island refuge area, or just north of there. And let's see, I launched the kayak and I paddled out pretty much straight across, and there used to be, I don't know what it's like now, but there used to be a lot of nice grass in there with big potholes, like big deep sandy potholes in there. And at certain times of the year, I guess, you would have giant sea trout laid up in those potholes, and you can catch them. And I didn't know anything about that, but I had seen some really nice pushes out in this bay, I think the weekend before, and because I was fishing off the dike roads, which is what I used to do. But I was like, I'm gonna take the kayak, I'm gonna check and see what was moving around out there. But in the kayak, I'm so low, and it was sitting inside kayak, you couldn't see into the water. You weren't sight fishing. I was just reading the surface of the water. If I could see, there's a pothole there, I'd make some casts. And I remember I was throwing, I just started fly tying too, and it was probably like a 1/0 SC17, like a tarpon hook. I didn't really know hooks or their uses at the time. And I had like a bunny rabbit coming out the back of the fly with a bunch of gold flash, and then it was like a yellow bucktail belly with like a red bucktail top. It was almost like a deceiver front with like a rabbit tail and gold flash coming out the back. Not big, just kind of small. And that's all I had. And I was like, you know what, I'm gonna be throwing this all day. And it was early morning, and I got out, and I was thinking about redfish or snook or something. I really wasn't. Trout this size, from where I was from on the West Coast, we'd never caught trout this big. I didn't even think in my mind that I would be coming across a fish like this. And I actually caught two almost back to back in this area. And I remember throwing, stripping, and just the gnarliest eat on the surface that I've seen. I mean, this fish almost cartwheeled, and I thought it was like a snook or something because it was low light at the time. It was still early morning. This thing blew up, almost flipped over, and missed the fly, and I had to throw back in there. And at the time, some of that grass was starting to die, so it was very difficult to get a good retrieve because there was so much floating grass. And I remember thinking, shit, there's no way I'm gonna get back in there and hook this fish. And sure enough, I was able to get a cast right back in, and as soon as it hit the water, he ate it, and I hooked him. And I thought it was a redfish or a snook or something. I didn't really know, but it was pulling so hard, and it was pulling me in the kayak. Got it in, and I have no idea. Again, I'm alone. I have this little cell phone that was like it wasn't a phone that opened. It was like the top like slid. It was like the stupidest thing. So I'm trying to hold the trout like this. I know I got a photo of the fish like this along my arm. I had another photo of like, all I could do was hold it like this by the belly and try and photograph it. Probably wasn't the best thing for the fish at the time. But I got a really cool photo, I think, of holding it out like this with the phone like that. I'll try and include that in this. But I know I have that photo, and it was just huge. It was it was just fat. Like, is all I could think was like, this is a giant fat fish, and it was just like, it reminded me almost of like an eel towards the back. Like, it was just super long, and it was 30 inches plus, I would imagine. By the photos and just by my own memory, and I would say anywhere between 8 to 10 pounds. It was a huge trout, and I was so stoked. I was so pumped again, like thinking, oh, from these, you catch a 17-inch trout out, on the West Coast, and that's sort of what you're dealing with. And then here I am with this monster sea trout, and I let it go, and everything was cool. Not 5 minutes later, they all must have been in this area, because not 5 minutes later, same thing. I had only moved 50 feet. Boom, another one about the same size. And that changed everything. And it wasn't until years later, really, in that I fished all over there, never found another one. And then there was another time I was way north in the Indian River, which is where I used to fish most of the time. I'd put in, I think it was Peacock's Pocket, and I'd paddle out and then head around those little breaker islands and stuff and go north along that shoreline. And there was a time there I was with my wife. Again, it was like a little sandy pothole. I had a small little minnow fly on. Not much different than that, really. Except it had a little more flash on it. And I was just blind casting because I couldn't really see into the water. And I made a long cast at the pothole, and as soon as it hit, these two big fish came out. And again, I'm thinking about redfish just because of the size of these fish. Come out, and they're chasing it, and I'm at a low angle, so I can't really see down in the water like if I was on a boat or standing up or something, because I'm low in the sit inside kayak at the time. And this fish tries to eat and misses, and I'm stripping, and he misses, and he misses, and he misses, and 3 or 4 times all the way to the bow of my boat where he hooks up. But all I could do at that point is do it like a trout set. And I remember hooking and thinking, this was the worst hook set ever. And he took off running and running and running, and it was just peel and drag, and that one ended up popping off. But that was a gigantic sea trout as well, and they used to be in there. And I think, most of the bigger records, or maybe the fly record, is still from there. But it was a fantastic trout fishery as well as a red fishery, and just a really cool experience to be able to catch those fish. I know now that those fish are few and far between out there, with water issues again. But that fish there is another one that really got me super pumped and really pushed me to start looking at what are the possibilities of this fly thing. And that's pretty much it as far as my first gator trout on the fly. I do know that there were some times out there, this might help some people too, if you do fish sea trout a lot, where the water was like darker, and this is more in the Mosquito Lagoon, but when the water was darker, if you threw white flies, you could have hundreds of trout out in front of you and they weren't eating, and you switched to like purple and you would hook them every cast. So that was something I always did too with sea trout, is I'd fish a lot of like black and purple quans, like shrimp style fly, and they seemed to love that. So that ended up being a really good fly pattern for me out there too. But overall, guys, that's it for gator trout. My first 2 in the same day, monster gators. And if you've caught any big gator trout like that, let me know where. You don't have to give me GPS coordinates, but let me know what part of the state you were in and how big it was in the comment section below. Be sure to subscribe. Check us out on Patreon at Backwater Fly Fishing for exclusive fly tying content as well as other fly tying related material. And we'll catch you guys later. Deuces.